The text on my phone screen blurred as I read it again. Wire transfer request pending approval. $47,000. My hands were steady at first. The shaking came later, after the realization settled in, after the understanding crystallized that my stepson had done this, and worse, that my wife knew. The coffee I'd just poured slipped from my grip and splashed across my chest, burning through my shirt and into my skin like a brand, marking the exact moment everything I believed about family ended. My name is Robert Chen. I'm 62 years old, a retired aerospace engineer from San Diego County. For 34 years, I designed hydraulic systems for commercial aircraft. I was the man whose work made sure planes didn't fall out of the sky. I raised 2 daughters who grew into doctors, paid off my mortgage in 15 years, lived carefully, deliberately, and honestly. I thought retirement would be quiet. Golf, volunteering at the Veteran Center, maybe finally taking a few trips I'd postponed for decades. Instead, retirement taught me that trust can be weaponized and that the people sleeping under your roof can be the ones dismantling your life piece by piece. It started small because it always does. The first request was $800, car trouble. The second was $1,200 for rent when a roommate situation conveniently collapsed. My wife Patricia had married me 5 years earlier after her first husband passed away, and she brought her son Damien into our home. He was 28 then, charming on the surface, smooth talking, ambitious in a vague, undefined way. He worked in sales, drove a nicer car than I thought prudent, talked endlessly about starting a business. I wanted to be supportive. I wanted Patricia to see me as a man who embraced her entire family, not just her. Within 6 months, I had co-seen the lease. By the second year, I'd loaned him $6,000 for business inventory. The money never returned, but the promises never stopped. He was always just one deal away, one contract from paying me back. Patricia would squeeze my hand across the dinner table and tell me how good I was to him, how his real father never believed in him the way I did. That was the trick. They cast me as the hero in a story they were writing, and I didn't realize until much later that I wasn't the hero at all. I was the mark. 3 weeks before everything collapsed, I checked my credit score out of routine habit. Engineers monitor systems. The number had dropped 89 points. That's not a fluctuation. That's a failure. I pulled my credit report and felt something inside me fracture. 3 credit cards I had never opened. A personal loan from an online lender I didn't recognize. An auto loan for a vehicle I didn't own. My name, my social security number, my address, all of it legitimate on paper, all of it fraudulent in reality. I sat in my home office overlooking the canyon where hawks circle on warm afternoons and felt the foundation of my beliefs give way. Not heartbreak, something deeper. The belief that love imposes limits. That even flawed people won't cross certain lines with someone who trusts them. I documented everything. Engineers don't panic. We trace failures. I built spreadsheets, cross-referenced timestamps, tracked ATM withdrawals at 2 in the morning from places I'd never been. I followed Venmo transfers to accounts with names like Fastcash and LoanShark87. I found charges for bottle service, designer shoes, betting apps, and a $4,000 purchase at a jewelry store I later learned Damien's girlfriend managed. The total damage was $73,000, money saved through decades of discipline, sacrifice, and deferred pleasure so my daughters could graduate debt-free. I didn't confront him. I called my attorney instead. Margaret Dew listened quietly, then told me to freeze everything immediately. We spent hours locking down accounts, placing fraud alerts, opening new banking relationships. She asked me to check the deed to my house, the one I'd owned outright before marrying Patricia. Something inside me had always whispered wait when the topic of adding her name came up. That instinct saved me. The deed was still mine alone. But Margaret found something else, an attempted lien filing. Someone had tried to open a home equity line of credit using my property, listing Damien as co-borrower. I remembered signing documents weeks earlier when I was recovering from minor surgery, trusting Patricia when she said they were routine estate updates. Margaret's voice turned firm. This was elder financial abuse, fraud, identity theft. She told me to file a police report immediately. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark watching digital numbers crawl toward morning. At 2:47 a.m., I heard Patricia's phone buzz, heard Damien's angry voice through the speaker say that I was going to ruin everything. Her response was too quiet to hear, but I already knew what side she was on. The next morning, I confronted them. Damien didn't deny anything. He smiled and told me I was old, that I didn't need the money, that I was selfish for caring. Patricia stood between us and said we should handle this as a family. When I told them I'd already filed a police report, Damien threw a mug of scalding coffee at my chest. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. Patricia screamed, but she moved toward him, not me. She told me to get out of the house I'd built with my own hands. I drove myself to the emergency room with my shirt stuck to my skin. The nurse treated second-degree burns and quietly photographed everything. For your records, she said. By that afternoon, Margaret had filed for an emergency restraining order. Evidence piled up, medical reports, bank records, forensic accounting. The judge granted the order without hesitation. confession. Damien was charged with identity theft, forgery, and attempted fraud. The investigation revealed a gambling addiction that had burned through nearly $90,000. Patricia had known enough to stop it and chose not to. The plea deal spared him prison but not consequences. Probation, restitution, a felony record. Patricia filed for divorce soon after. The prenup protected what I had built. I sold the house anyway. Too many ghosts. Now I live near the ocean. I build model airplanes in my garage. I volunteer at the V. I go to therapy. Not because I'm broken, but because healing requires structure. My daughters visit often. One of them told me they were relieved when I left. That kindness needs boundaries. I believe that now. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're architecture, the load-bearing walls that keep a life from collapsing. If you see yourself in this story, understand this. You are not required to destroy yourself to prove love. Family doesn't steal your identity. Family doesn't forge documents. Family doesn't burn you when you say no. And if they do, that isn't family. That's exploitation wearing a familiar face. I learned that lesson at 62 with scars on my chest and peace in my home. I hope you learn it sooner and cheaper.